So in the Sahel, this vast, arid, and conflict-torn region that is stretching sort of across the heart of West Africa, there is an unfolding human rights crisis that not too many people, and certainly no media, is reporting, and therefore not too many people are aware of. A people as old and ancient as the region is caught in a nightmare situation. They are known as the Fulani. In French, they call them Poles or Fulbe. They are among the largest ethnic groups in the African continent. They're numbering a little more than 40 million people, according to some estimates, with communities spreading from Senegal in the west all the way to Sudan in the east. Now, traditionally, the Fulanis are nomadic pastoralists, and for centuries, they have been essentially crisscrossing all the national boundaries in the region with their cattle, trading, herding, and preserving an old oral and cultural heritage defined by a number of factors, including mobility, including Islam, and a deep sense of identity known as the Pulaaku, which is a code of conduct that emphasizes a number of positive traits: dignity, patience, self-control, and respect. But today, being Fulani in the Sahel, in countries like Burkina Faso or in Mali and even in Nigeria, is not simply an ethnic profile. It's becoming a death sentence. Massacres of Fulani are frequent these days. Two recent massacres in Solenzo, that's located in Burkina Faso, and Diafarabe in Mali are sort of the latest in a string of targeted killings that have turned the entire Fulani communities into suspects in their own homelands. From March through May 2025, at least 130 civilians, and that includes, by the way, men, women, and children, were systematically rounded up and executed, accused not of individual crimes, but of the crime of belonging to the Fulani people. And so they are guilty by association. Some were tortured, some were tied and gagged with livestock ropes. In one of the most horrifying episodes in Diafarabe, 26 Fulani men were abducted in broad daylight at the village market. They were then ferried across a river and then slaughtered near a cemetery. Their bodies were mutilated and left for relatives to discover, heads separated from torsos, limbs scattered, etc. Horrific. So what's driving this brutality? At the heart of this tragedy lies an insidious and clearly a dangerous belief taking hold within state institutions. The idea that if not all jihadists are Fulani, then all Fulani are jihadists or collaborators or something like that. This toxic oversimplification, repeated in high offices and widespread in military barracks, has sort of morphed into state policy. It has militarized ethnic identity, and it is unleashing communal retribution under the banner of national defense. Take Burkina Faso, for example. This belief has found what I would call a political utility. Since taking power in a coup back in September 2022, the junta chief, Captain Ibrahim Traore, has restructured the military with a goal of consolidating loyalty and securing his rules. It happens everywhere, but that's more pronounced in Burkina Faso and in the region. Central to this plan is the creation of what they call volontaires pour la défense de la patrie. Remember, French is the primary language there still. The VDPs translates into something as volunteers for the defense of the homeland. These are civilian militias essentially recruited from farming communities and often from different, obviously clearly different ethnic backgrounds, essentially Mosi and Bobo, given just 2 weeks of training and unleashed into areas abandoned by the formal state. Officially tasked to fight jihadi groups like Ansar al-Islam and Jenim, these militias have clearly become vectors for communal vengeance, targeted essentially Fulani civilians with near total impunity. In one chilling meeting in February 2023, it was reported that Traore summoned Fulani religious and community leaders and reportedly warned them, and I'm going to quote here, "Tell your people to put down their weapons or I will kill them all," end of quote. His government obviously denies any ethnic targeting, yet clearly the facts on the ground speak otherwise. In the Solenzo massacre alone, documented by videos that surfaced on social media, and they are frightening and horrendous, we see VDP fighters, some even identified by name and unit, were seen executing unarmed civilians, dragging bodies into tricycles, and filming themselves. They were actually filming themselves with bloodied machetes. Now, the logic of these killings is clearly genocidal. It raised the Fulani as a threat simply because they might sympathize with the jihadists. But this logic is not only morally bankrupt, it's strategically a catastrophe. Every massacre actually becomes a propaganda gift to the jihadist recruiters. I mean, think about it. These recruiters who arrive in the aftermath of attacks with food, protection, and a narrative of revenge. Take Ousmane Diko. He is the brother of the famous jihadist leader in Burkina Faso. He recently appeared in a video days after the killings, calling on Fulani youth to avenge their slain kin by joining the jihadist cause. Now, as you would expect, the Burkinabe government, for its part, continues to deny responsibility. It has an official stance, and its official stance is that essentially civilians caught in the crossfire were being used as human shields by the fleeing jihadists. However, multiple witnesses, including human rights organizations and even survivors, have refuted that theory and are rejecting it. In neighboring Mali in the north, the situation mirrors that of Burkina Faso. The Fulani there are trapped between jihadists who are wreaking havoc. They levy taxes, they destroy irrigation dams, and of course they kill those who resist their rules. And on the other hand, state-backed militias or soldiers who see every Fulani as a potential traitor. In Diafarabe, a region in Mali, tensions had already been building after local soldiers were ambushed during a food convoy mission. So what happens is days later, in an apparent retaliation, they returned not to confront the jihadists. That is, the soldiers returned not to confront the jihadists, but to execute unarmed Fulani villagers. One man survived, shot 3 times as he fled into the bush. And of course, the Fulani have little recourse. Displacement has become the only viable option. They have to flee. Across the Sahel, Fulani families are streaming into refugee camps in, for example, places in northern Côte d'Ivoire or in Ghana or in Togo and certainly in Benin, and others remain either too poor or too old to flee, living under the constant threat of reprisal, whether from the state, from the militias, or from the jihadists. Now, it's important to understand who the Fulani are beyond these headlines of blood and fire. Just as I introduced earlier, they are herders, they are traders, they are teachers and spiritual leaders. They are, from a religious perspective, they are Sufi Muslims, often conservative in culture, but deeply diverse in outlook and in geography. They don't form a single political movement. They're somewhat like the Tuaregs. They're not a single political movement. They're not an armed group. And yet their dispersion across national borders makes them convenient scapegoats in regional conflicts where essentially governments are increasingly fragile and desperate. And so what you see taking place against them, though, these events, it's not just only about war, it's about the death of trust. Trust between neighbors, trust between citizens and the state, and of course, trust in the idea that ethnicity should never dictate one's right to live. And so, if there is a future for the Sahel, and hopefully there is, it cannot be built on the mass graves and the ethnic cleansing. It certainly must begin with recognizing the humanity of the Fulani and the Tuaregs and all of the other ethnic groups, perhaps breaking the cycle of vengeance that now threatens to consume not only them, but the very existence of the region and West Africa.